Okay, hi guys. I am so excited. So I have my friend. Yes, I'm going to call her my friend already, Alex. And I am super duper excited. So we connected on social media. Again, one of my favorite reasons for social media is you find so many amazing people out there. And she is just, oh, I'm already like, I love her by looking at her page. She's a badass. She's got a podcast. She's just all things for like mompreneurs and all those kinds of things. I just absolutely adore and love her. I'm excited for her to share her story and how adoption has come into her life. So I will go ahead and turn the time over to her and she can introduce herself and just her story. So go ahead.
Hello. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to death to be here. I love talking adoption with anyone and everyone, and especially adoptees. Like your guys' voice are the ones that matter. Like that's exciting. So yeah, I'm Alex. I am married to Brian, and we have 4 kids, 2 adopted and 2 bio. Yeah, that's me like in a nutshell. Do you want me to start at the beginning of our story? Okay. So I have always known I wanted to adopt. I don't know why. I didn't grow up in an adoptive family. We didn't have close friends that were adoptive families. But my mom she's like, even in high school, you were like for sure gonna adopt. And anyway, I just think that's kind of cool because I didn't have like a reason to. Um, when I met my husband, probably like date number 2, I was like, I'm definitely gonna adopt. Hope that's cool with you, which was very weird. But he was like, okay. And so we ended up getting married, and we knew that adoption was gonna be part of our story. We wanted it to be sooner than later. Like we did not want to be those people that were like, we're definitely gonna adopt, like someday. Like we didn't want to do that. We were like, no, this is gonna be very quick. And so we actually started the process to adopt through our state, so through foster care. And then I got pregnant, and which was great. And so we ended up taking our training classes when I was 8 months pregnant, which we got a lot of really funny looks because who does that? We do. And we also thought we knew everything. So this is not me being like, yeah, we're super cool and we did it all right. Like, no, we did not know what we were doing. Like that was not necessarily a fantastic idea. It worked for us, but man, that led to some really crazy years. Okay, so I'm trying to think of the timeline. So then we had been pursuing older kids. Like that was really important to us because those are the hardest to adopt out. Um, Especially older kids of minorities or with like minor special needs. Not that we just didn't feel equipped to handle severe special needs, just because we didn't have any experience with that. But minor stuff like behavioral things or I mean, in our state, just being of a minority puts you in a category of special needs because you're harder to adopt. And so that was the box we checked. Um, we just kept going up in ages. We were thinking like 7, 8, and then we were pursuing 2 boys who when we looked at their picture in our state's heart gallery, they looked about 7 or 8. And the more we pursued them, we found out they were 12 and 13, and it was an old photo, but we were already really kind of attached to them. And so we kept going with their case and we kept pursuing them. And then that didn't work out, and that was really hard. I think it was actually harder on my husband. I think it was a little easier for me to pivot because I was just like, running toward adoption. I was like, that's fine, let's find another avenue. And my husband was like, wait, stop. Like this was kind of hard for us. And so um we we kept pursuing that and just other areas, and that flagged us as like these people are interested in teenagers. So we then somehow were in teenager world, and we kept getting people asking us about teenager cases. Um, we ended up meeting with a kid from just a different part of the state than us, and we had a whole meeting with him, and ended up like the whole time he just seemed really disinterested, and that hurt our feelings a little bit because we're like, we're cool, we're like really young. I mean, I was like 25 at the time, and I was like, I mean, what's wrong with us? And he come to find out, we found out that he did not choose us. And then we found out later that he was only meeting us to check a box, that he had already chosen his family, but his caseworker made him meet with another family just to like say he met with 2 and made a educated choice. So that was a little frustrating for us because we were just kind of like, so we were just there to fulfill a requirement. And so his caseworker at his group home that he was at So not affiliated with DHS. That's what Department of Human Services, what they call it in our state. He called us and was like, hey, I'm not supposed to do this, but this kid's roommate at the group home is also available for adoption, and he's 13, and will you meet him too? I'd love to introduce you. So we were like, okay, fine. Yes. And so a couple months later, or maybe even less, we ended up meeting our son. We did not know that he was going to be our son at this point. And it moved really quickly. That was June that we met him the first time, and he moved in with us in August, which was, so we had it, let's recap. We had an 8-month-old baby. He moved in with us the day after his 14th birthday and the day before he started high school for in a new town, new family, new school. And he was from a very small part of our state. And so the high school there was like, connected to the other schools, and there was just the one. And he moved to a big town with big high schools, one of, multiple high schools. And so it was a big change for him. So I was still young, and a funny story, on his first day of high school, I was like reprimanded by a teacher for not being in line where I was supposed to be with the other students. So that was how we started out our parenting process with him. Yeah. And so, okay, this is where it like speeds up really fast. So all this happens a week and a half after he moved in. We found out that I was pregnant by surprise. And so we tell him like, hey, you know how you just moved in with a new family? Well, we're actually gonna have a baby. And he was, I think that was hard on him. We went through it. So it's like, I want to be there for him, but I was very sick, for the first few months of him being with us. And so we found out that it was our daughter. So we had our like little gender reveal. And then the very next day, we get a call from DHS telling us that our son's bio mom had another baby and abandoned him at the hospital, and would we adopt him too? They did not know I was pregnant yet. They didn't really need to know. So I had to be like, well, so I called my husband, and immediately, like, my thought was not like, this is going to happen. I was like, this is crazy, and I just need to tell him this, and we're going to say no. And so we started the conversation of like, we cannot do this. Like, this is crazy. And then it was a 5-minute conversation. By the end of the conversation, we were like, I mean, we kind of have to do this, right? It was just the craziest thing how it shifted our attitudes. It was like a total God thing. So I called, our pastor, and I called like my mom and just people that I knew we would need to have in our corner. And I was like, hey, we're about to say yes to like the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard of. We have a baby already. We have another baby on the way, and we're going to take in a drug addicted baby with a teenager. Like, what? And they were all like, do it. So, yeah, I had to be like, yes, we will take it, but we will need a waiver, because in our state, you cannot have 3 children, or you can only have 2 children under the age of 3. So we were going to need that waiver for like multiple years. And so they were like, yeah, no problem at all, for sure. And so I'm like trying to remember what happened. So we got him from the hospital. He had been in the NICU. He was 2 weeks old at the time. He had been in the NICU for all his life. He was withdrawing from meth, marijuana, which, you can't really withdraw from marijuana, but still he had marijuana in his system. She smoked. So he had like nicotine and tobacco withdrawals. And then amphetamines, which I am not entirely sure what I still don't, this is my naivete. I don't know the difference between methamphetamine and regular amphetamine. I don't understand that. Also opiates. So that was the big one, the opiates. That's the one that we are seeing like lasting results from. So all of that at once. He had the tremors. He was just beside himself crying all the time. They had given him morphine, so he was also withdrawing from that. And so it was just like a really rough start for him. And I was big pregnant. I wasn't sick anymore, thank goodness. But it was just hard. We were really thrown into the sleepless nights. Like, usually when you have a baby, you have a long time to prepare for that. And we were not prepared. Like, mentally, it was very hard. And also that's when our teens started showing and acting out. Turns out he has reactive attachment disorder, which we didn't know at that time. We just saw the results of that and we were like, what is happening with all of our life? And so, yeah, so we just kept going, we kept going. And our 5-year-old, he's 5 now, he finished withdrawing about 4 months, which gave us about a month and a half to then like finish preparing for our baby girl. So then when she was born, we had 2 under 1, and our oldest bio was he was 16 months old. Yeah. So 3 babies. And yeah, that's kind of how our adoption story started. They were like, do you want to stay open or do you want to close your home? We were like, close, please. We cannot literally handle anymore right now. And we still have not reopened. You know, that was kind of we were thrown into it all, and we're still, I mean, things are so much better now, obviously, but we're still like, we're good for now. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of our adoption story in a nutshell. Then we transitioned to this really hard time where I was able to stop and reflect. You know, in that moment, you're really in survival mode. And more things happened with our teenager. You know, he ended up having to spend some time in inpatient, facilities, and had, police involved with things. And so there was a lot more craziness with his story. But as far as with the babies who are still in our home, things were able to slow down. And like I said, I was able to just kind of look back and reflect, see, what happened, and who was there for us, and what did I need that was fulfilled or was, helped. What did I need that wasn't? And I realized that a lot of it is so intangible for adoptive moms. There's not like, yes, meals are great. Like that. Thank you. Like, don't stop giving meals to adoptive moms. Don't stop offering to clean their house, except maybe like be more forceful about it. Don't be like, do you need me to come clean your house? Because we will always say no, because that's weird. But if you're like, I'm going to come over and clean your house, you don't have a choice, then that's great. Like, do that, please. I mean, those tangible things are great. But what was really hard was the invisible stuff. It was the stuff that it's like, I feel like a crazy person, and I just like my heart needed tending to. And it's something that you can't really put your finger on. Like if you say, what do you need? I don't know. I don't know what I need. I just need like, not this. I need relief. I need prayer. I need someone to just sit with me and be like, this is hard. And that's all I can do. That's all. I can't fix it. I can't help you. I can just sit with you in it and not leave you. And believe you. Cause, I don't know if you've had any other rad parents on your show, but rad is really typical for adoptive moms to feel like they're crazy, because it's something that you can't really describe very well. And it's such a manipulation that you feel like they're playing mind games with you, and other people don't see it, because that's the whole thing, is they behave really well for other people. And so it's like people think that you're being too harsh, or you're being ridiculous, or you're overreacting, or something like that. And that just messes with you, And so in the middle of that, I'm feeling like this. I'm feeling people not believing me. People are not seeing the problem. And we're just kind of left to deal with it. So I saw those gaps. I started to see like, these are where the gaps are. And what adoptive moms need is not to be taught how to do this better, because there's a lot of resources out there for that. There's a lot of like, let me help you understand adoption. Let me help you understand your kids. Let me help you go through this process. Let me help you. And those are great. Like, and this is not me spitting on those things. Like, that's awesome. But what was missing was just like support, like and not just like a situation for people to complain and like be negative and be like, this sucks. Am I right? Like, not that necessarily, but just kind of like, hey, we're in this together. And so I kind of had this idea. We were driving back from a vacation in the middle of the night, because we thought that that would be a good idea. We thought that driving overnight would be like, this is going to be great. Our kids will sleep. They did not sleep. So it was just like us in the middle of the night, angry. Anyway, so it was my shift, and the car was at least quiet for like a few minutes. And I'm thinking, and I wake up my husband, and I'm like, Brian, wouldn't it be like really cool if I started a podcast for, for adoptive moms, where we just like share stories and have all this stuff and, whatever. And he's like, and like rolled over and went back to sleep. And I was like, that's awesome. That's great. I'll tell him about it tomorrow. So the next morning I was like, do you remember what we talked about last night? And he was like, absolutely not. What do you mean? So I repeated everything, told him the whole story again. And I was like, wouldn't that be really cool just, to do like, in a couple years when things settle down? And he was like, no, we're going to do it now. And so the next month I launched the Adoptive Mom podcast. And my husband, now I have to give the caveat. I did not teach myself how to podcast in a month. My husband already was a podcaster. He does digital marketing. We had all the equipment. So it was not like outside of the waters we already swam in. But I was able to like get some interviews under my belt and have a stock. And I did learn more about interviewing and how I wanted to structure the show. And so, yeah, we've been doing it. We just finished up season 7. And I really just wanted to stick with the mission of like, I didn't want it to just be repetitive stories. I didn't want it to be a self-help. I didn't want it to be like, here's what you're doing wrong. Here's how you can do things better. Or like, let me help you, whatever. I wanted it to be just like encouragement and, we're in this together. And some of my most popular episodes are just about grace for adoptive moms. And like, hey, you're doing a good job, even if you don't feel like you're doing a good job. Actually, one of my very favorite episodes and one of my most popular, it's about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs are just your basic like things that you need to survive, right? Food, shelter, water, clothing, stuff like that. And how if you're meeting those needs, you're already doing a good job. But we feel like if we're not meeting that top level, the like acceptance, the unconditional love, those things that we are failing as adoptive moms. And that's just not true. And it's not just to say like, let me throw some food at you and it's going to be fine. But what I learned very quickly in our adoption story was that attachment is not a guarantee. Attachment and love, the same way that you're going to love your other kids or whatever, is not how it works. And that was something I was very misinformed about. I thought that my passion for adoption was going to transition into love, the way I understood love. And it doesn't. And I had to learn that love can look so different. Love can look so different for different kids. And like sometimes loving that kid is providing a safe place. It's providing a launching pad into adulthood. Even if we never have that relationship, even if we never have the like, I'm your mommy and I'm going to nurture you. Like that was never going to happen. He doesn't call me mom. He doesn't call my husband dad. And I had to be okay with that. And I remember I always tell the story. Right after he moved in, I was crying in my closet, which became like a thing. And I went in my closet, I was crying and I was just praying and I was like, what happened, God? Like, why have you left me? Like, why do I just feel completely alone? Like, this was a terrible idea. What did you do this for? You are so ill-equipped, all these things. And I was like, where did you go? And is the closest to like an audible voice prayer that I've ever experienced. It was just God being like, this is still my plan, even if there's nothing in it for you, even if like the good feelings are not there, this is still like what I want to happen. And I will never forget that because that was when I started to be like, oh, it's not going to look like what I thought it was going to look like, but that doesn't mean it's not good. And it still took years before I was at the place where I was like, oh, like this may never happen. Like in my mind, I was like, we have 4 years to this finish line of like, everything's going to be great by then. And it never happened. And I have to be like, that wasn't a failure. Like, that wasn't just like, well, you missed the mark, Alex. Like, no, that's not true. And, our adoption with our youngest looks completely different. And that's okay. And that's like, I'm a perfectionist. I am an Enneagram 1. Like, that is not my personality to be like, win. That's a win. Like, no, it feels like a failure. I'd rather take a 0 than a 70%. But it's a 70% and it has to be okay. And so that was my biggest lesson with adoption. And that's something I've been able to share on my podcast and really just encourage moms that we're already doing a good job, even if we don't have everything right. And sure, there's room for improvement. Like, I'm not naive. I'm not saying like everyone's killing it. Like, that's not true. But when we slow down and say, okay, what are the actual markers that we're trying to hit? Have we already hit those? Or like, what can we do to hit that lower level? What can we do to just like break through some of those walls? Not all of them, not the furthest one, the most whatever, but like, how can we reach these minor goals? How can we change our expectations, not lower them, but change them? And just stop being so hard on ourselves, you know? So yeah, I mean, that kind of brings us to now. We've had a few other things that we've walked through, and now our oldest is about to have a baby, actually. So that's been interesting. I'm 30 and he's anyway, it's a whole thing, but that's kind of where we're at. So
Oh, can I just say, like, I love you so much more, even like, seriously, no, for real though, because like, even like, though I'm not an adoptive mom per se, like, I feel all the things you're saying about being a mom. Like, we are probably the hardest on ourselves. And I think that's absolutely beautiful of how you're saying, like, for me to even be better. And this is why I love doing these, because I always learn something, whether it's about adoption or not. But the biggest thing is, like, I always want to be there to help people, but I'm like, how you're just like, no, just freaking bulldoze it down and do it. Don't say, can I help you? Just be like, I'm coming over Wednesday at 9 o'clock to come clean your toilets. I'm going to be there. Like, that kind of thing. And I love that it's more of, like you said, it's something not tangible. And I think a lot of people go through that on any walks of life, where you honestly just like, it like made me super emotional, because it's like, you just need somebody to sit down with you, and they don't have to say anything, but just be there with you while you like, work through hard shit. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, that's so true. You need it. Like, not just adoptive moms, but anybody and everybody with like feelings that come up. And I love that you had that experience with God too, because like, for me, it's been such a huge part in it is God. And there's so many different faiths and walks of life, but when it comes to every single one of these that I've done, like, it's either God or a higher power that has played some role in it. And it's just so amazing to see, and so amazing to watch how all these stories have unfolded. And so I really, really appreciate you. And I'm going to go take a listen to your podcast. I haven't even listened to it yet, but like, seriously, like, I just love that that's your mission, is to go and to find these different stories, but also to find different ways to help add value to things in life. And I just think that's amazing. And I love how you also said too, that love is different, and how it's hard. Like you said, you're a perfectionist and you want that immediate, and you want it now, and you want it to be perfect, and but you've just had to learn to work through it. And I just think that's amazing. I've never thought of it that way, but I totally can understand that with having kids, where it's just so totally different. But obviously, it's different stages of life, where he came into your life, or your baby came into your life differently, and all those kinds of things. And it's just, you're just a badass. And I just seriously, like, I love you.
well, thank you. Okay, first of all, one thing, I need that on a t-shirt, the like, sit down and work through hard shit with me. I need that.
Seriously though, like,
you need to do that.
It's just like, seriously, that's like what it's all about. Like, and like you said, as women, I feel like there's a lot of times too, where it's exactly what you said. I don't know what I need right now. Just sit down, just hold me, or just sit here with me while we shove our faces full of chocolate and I just cry. Like,
exactly.
Like,
does it have to be weird?
So anyway, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. You shared like everything perfect, like just how it's blessed you, the trials and everything. You gave advice. What let me ask this. What advice, because there are a couple women who I've talked to who they are looking to teenagers, like looking at like foster care or something like that. What's probably your number one advice for going into adopting older, or foster care for older?
So, okay, two things. First of all, kind of tagging along with what I said, I think more people would adopt teenagers if they lowered their expectations, or if they understood that like, this does not have to look like attachment with my younger kids, or even my younger adoptive kids. Like I said, I mean, I literally, I'm about to say something that's very cliche. I forget that my younger one's adopted all the time, because we've had him since he was a baby. Like, he's mine. I would die for him. Like, it's completely different. And giving yourself grace to like, that's okay. And I think that more people would adopt teenagers, like I said, if they just didn't expect themselves to attach the same way. Second of all, I think that knowing that attachment disorders, like, people need to know that that is very common. When we were taking the training and they talked about RAD, or reactive attachment disorder, we were like, man, that's like, check that box. No, we definitely don't want that. And then turns out we got a RAD kid. Like, that, it happens a lot. And if it's not RAD, it's ODD, or it's, fetal alcohol syndrome, or it's like some sort of trauma disorder. It happens a lot. And I think that people just need to almost not normalize it, but just be like, this is probably what we're looking at. And like that, it doesn't always, like, our teenager, he never like did anything too scary. I mean, like there were scary moments, like there were toys thrown and like people shoved and stuff like that, but like I was never like afraid for our lives or something like that. And so it doesn't have to look like that, but it I think just expecting that, anticipating it, understanding that that's normal for kids who have been through trauma, um that's what you need to go into foster care adoption with.
I love that so much. And I feel like even though like I was adopted at 2 weeks old, there's still a lot that you still have to work through. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like, okay, I was given up for adoption. How come? What went into play? You know, like, and there's feelings even to this day that I'm just kind of like, it's still so foreign to me. Like my kids look like me because I grew up not having anybody ever look like me. And so it still boggles my mind when people see my daughter and they're like, she's your Minnie. And I'm just like, it's so weird because I, I just
Never
like,
heard that before.
exactly. Like, and so I think I love that. And I stumbled across an account. I think you follow it too on Instagram. They posted something like to normalize that adoptees can love different people, two different
Mhm.
families, like everybody that's involved in it. And I absolutely loved it because it's so true. Like it's so true. And there's anyway, lots of different feelings that come with being an adoptee too, but I won't go into that.
Absolutely. But like you're like that matters. Like that matters for sure. And I think that that's one of the biggest things I've learned is that my youngest is going to have questions and like that's okay and we just have to anticipate that and that's hard. It's hard. But that's like letting go and not having the fear that like being interested in them means he doesn't love me, or being interested in them and trying to figure out where he came from does not mean that he doesn't love me. It doesn't mean that he doesn't appreciate us. It doesn't mean that he's not our kid. um and that's like I think that adoptive voices have really really helped me to understand that.
Well, because it's so true. I mean, like you're so great for at least for me. I'm grateful for everything. More than anything. I wanted to like seek out my birth mom to just tell her thank you. Tell her thank you so much because like without her, I wouldn't have the life I have. Wouldn't have the husband I have. Wouldn't have the kids I have. Just I wouldn't have plain and simple the life that I have. And I'm so extremely just like grateful for it. And so because I know when I met her, she was extremely nervous. Because I get that she probably didn't want me to have resentment or anything, and that was not the case. And I know it's not that way with everybody, but that's just how it was for me. So anyway, seriously, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to do this with me. I have loved it and I appreciate you so much for doing this. And I'm so grateful to finally meet your face and like this new friendship. And just, I love it. I'm going to make a shirt that says that.
Please do. I will buy it immediately.
So seriously, thank you so much. And I appreciate it. And you're just the best. Thank you. Thank you.
Girl, thank you for having me. Thank you for everything you do. Like, this is really cool. It's awesome. And I just want to support it so much. And I love your mission.
Well,
So
thank
it's
you.
all awesome.
Right back at you with your podcast. I seriously love it.